Okay.
You want me to talk now?
Yeah.
I was born in 1938 and the
Yeah.
war started in 1939 in September.
Yeah.
Right. I don't remember an awful lot of it at the beginning, but I can remember when we had the Morrison shelter indoors, and then a few years or a year later my father built an Anderson. Or was that the wrong way round?
Morrison or Anderson, I'm not sure which is
an
which.
outdoor one in
Yeah.
the garden where they dug a pit and then they put iron over the top,
Corrugated iron.
corrugated iron, and then they covered it in dirt.
Yeah.
And so we had an outdoor shelter and an indoor shelter.
One was called a Morrison,
when the war
and one is called
first,
an Anderson.
when we first started, we used to go under the stairs when the bombing, when the siren went.
Yeah.
And then after that we used to go into the indoor shelter, and then later on we used to go to the outdoor shelter.
Right, okay.
Um,
So was anyone in your family like conscripted to do any particular job?
My father, who went in the second wave because he was too old to go in the first wave, so when they conscripted the second lot, my father went.
Yeah.
He done his training, and he was on his last medical before he went to abroad to do the Normandy landings, the first one, and they found he was ill, and he couldn't go, so they conscripted him out.
And he was sent back home, was
he? Was sent back home, yeah.
And your mum wasn't conscripted to do anything?
No, my mother wasn't, because she had 2 young children.
Right.
My brother was 4 years older than me.
Right, okay.
And
neither...
and also my grandmother lived with us as well.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that.
Because, yes, my grandmother lived with us.
Right. And neither you or your brother were evacuated, were you?
No.
And why was that?
My mother, because we had my grandmother, and my mother decided not to go. And I can remember when we used to go on the buses, because my mother's family lived over the other side of London, everybody used to talk to us because they weren't used to children being about.
Oh really? It was that empty, was it?
So when you went on the buses, all the grown-ups wanted to talk to mother about the children, because they were all been evacuated and gone.
Oh right.
And
so most of your friends were evacuated, were they?
Yeah, my friend down the road, she was evacuated. She went to a farm somewhere up north. I can't remember where.
Oh right.
But there wasn't, I can't remember the school. There couldn't have been very many of us at school. No, oh no, because I didn't go to school then, did I? No, of course I didn't. But my brother must have done.
Yeah. Okay.
Then I can also remember, I think we were evacuated as a family to Lowestoft, and my mother didn't like it, so she came home. And we were in our house in South London.
Right.
And my mother's sister said, because we were near Croydon Airport, which was the main airport for South London in those days, it's not now, but it was then, my mother's sister said, the house is empty next door to me, come across and hire it for a period of time. You'll be safer here. Well, we was there about a fortnight, I think, and a bomb dropped.
Oh, really?
In the houses down the bottom of the garden.
Right.
And this was the time when we were in the Anderson shelter, indoor shelter, and my brother and I had had an argument because every night he slept on the outside and I slept on the inside, and my mother slept in the middle.
Yeah.
And my grandmother was down the end of the bed.
Right.
and I wanted to be on the outside. So this particular night, my mother said to my brother, "You've got to let her sleep on the outside."
Right.
Anyway, this bomb dropped, and all the windows and glass blew in, and the door blew across the entrance to the shelter, and the soot come down the chimney, and I was covered, like completely covered in soot, from head to toe, and I was completely black, and we had to wait in the shelter until the wardens come to get us out, because we had nothing on our feet.
So
and
was
the
this
glass,
hours?
Oh yeah, we had to wait in this shelter for a long time. There was no fire. There was a fire. I mean, it killed the people down the bottom of the garden, the houses down the bottom of the garden. But there was no fire in our house. We just got the blast.
Right.
And we couldn't get out of this. But for one thing, the door was across the entrance to this shelter, and we had to wait for the wardens to come. And also, there was so much glass on the floor where all the windows had blown in, and we got nothing on our feet.
Yeah.
And the wardens had to carry me and my brother, although he was older than me, out. And my mother, they had to find shoes for her to put on, and my grandmother, they had to help her out because she was old and she got stiff being in there, you know. And so we all went back to South London, and my mother's sister, who was next door, they stayed where they was, and they actually lived in their house, and they boarded all the windows up, and eventually they got their glass and everything back in, and their door. And another time, towards the end of the war, when the doodlebugs come over, the sirens went, and we all went into the shelter out in the garden. And all of a sudden, we heard this doodlebug, we used to call them doodlebugs, come over, and we could hear the drone. And my father was there then, because he was ill and not at work.
He was back, yeah.
And it came over, and you used to hold your breath, because if it cut out, they used to glide before they dropped. But we were lucky because it cut out over our garden. And my father said, "Come and watch it at the entrance," because it had flames coming out the back.
Right.
So we all went to the door and watched it. And then it cut out over our garden, and then it glided to about 3 roads on, and then it fell. And again, that killed a lot of people.
Oh my goodness.
And my father went down to help dig the people out, because although he was ill, he could still walk.
Yeah.
He couldn't do a lot of heavy lifting or anything. But he went and helped dig the people out that were still alive. And then he came home, and he's dreadful, he said. And all the houses were flattened, and it was just rubble where it had dropped. And there was a lot of big gaps where bombs had dropped in streets. You know, there'd be about 4 houses, and then there'd be 3 flattened houses, and then there'd be more houses. Then what else can I remember?
What about rationing? How much did that affect your life? Was it a struggle?
My mother had, we had ration books, and you could only get a little bit, and my mother and grandmother loved tea, and they always used to be running out of tea, but the lady down the road used to do some cooking, and she wanted sugar. So my mother used to swap some of her sugar for some of her tea.
Oh, okay.
So that we used to have more tea than sugar.
Yeah.
Then one day my aunt, who lived over the North London, we had a green ration book, which was a children's ration book.
Right.
And children that had a green ration book was when the ships come in and the docks unloaded, we were allowed to have bananas because we were children.
Oh, right.
And I'd never seen any much fruit at all.
So there wasn't any fruit around?
And there was no sweets, no nothing, no crisps, no lemonade, no, not until after the war that came in. And then my aunt used to travel all the way across London because she absolutely loved bananas, and my mother used to cut, because I was young and not very big, she used to have half of my banana, and my mother would make banana and sugar sandwiches.
Oh, right.
And then I'd have half and she'd have half. But she'd travel right from North London to South London for half a banana.
Wow.
And what else can I remember? What other questions have you got?
Did you know much about Hitler at the time, and Stalin?
I wasn't very old, but we were told that, I used to say to my father what would happen if we lost the war, and he used to say the Germans would march down the street and take you away somewhere. That's all I can really remember about. I mean, learnt a lot after the war about Hitler. More after the war than during the war.
But you learnt about him quite quickly after the war.
Oh yes. Stalin as well. We learnt about him after the war as well.
So even though you were young, you were quite afraid of Hitler then?
No, not necessarily Hitler. The Germans.
The Germans.
We were really frightened of the Germans. Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, I think that's everything.
Anything else?
No, I don't think so.
I can't remember anything else to tell you.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you very much.
Yes.